late night, eating all that stuff and talking crazy like musicians do. I couldn't do it now because, bang, I just shifted. So now, all of a sudden, and I had not developed a relationship with other pastors that felt comfortable enough to let the young buck in, because Church of God in Christ is an older church. Most of the pastors in Church of God in Christ are 60 and up. Wow. So here I am, just by myself. Wow. Yo, figure it out. Figure it out. And the only way I can figure it out is with God. I had to shut in with God, because everything in my life when I became a pastor, it was just a overnight shift. I don't know why some folks run to be a pastor.
Welcome to Behind the Music with Q. So glad to have you viewing today, listening today. This podcast will discuss what happens behind the music, the process of making music, the challenges of life, etc. Life, family, encouragement, wisdom, knowledge, to just continue to empower and share value and significant information and things you need to know to just continue to help people to continue to seek the Lord, continue to dream big, continue to have vision. So I have really a heart to reach out to my brothers and my sisters. And we have a wonderful guest today, my brother for 20 plus years with us today, Pastor David Wright. And honored to have him with us today. So on this podcast, we're going to be having singers, preachers, teachers, just great people with purpose, that love God and that love people, love their ministry, love their particular giftings and talents, operating in them at a high level. So let's just pray really quick, okay? And then we'll move on. Father, we thank you, we give you praise for this wonderful day that you've allowed us to see. Thank you for your grace and your mercy and your love and kindness. Thank you for this opportunity to share. Let something fruit, let there be fruit from the seeds that are sown today, from the words of life, from the words of empowerment, the words of encouragement today. Let it bring significant and value and worth to people's life. Touch, heal, save, deliver by the power of your spirit today. We lean on you. We depend on you. Thank you for Pastor Dave. Thank you for his family. Thank you for what you're doing in this ministry. Thank you for what we share. Well, Father, we invite your presence. Lord, I didn't hear, Lord God. Thank you for Anton. Give us the wisdom on what to say and how to say. Touch your people everywhere that we hear this. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen. Amen.
So I am tremendously honored to have my brother, my friend, Pastor David Wright, man. Great to have you on today, man.
What's up, Q? It's good to be here, man.
Oh, man. Yes, man. So, man, please, man, share with us. Give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are. I'm sure people know, but I'm sure it's going to be an introduction to hopefully people who don't know you, but will get to know you better today.
Yes, I'm Pastor David Wright from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm one of the sons of the late Reverend Timothy Wright. I'm the third son, the middle boy.
Yes, sir.
Of the late Reverend Timothy Wright, and I played organ for him. I was his minister of music since 1995. And I was a musician up until the day of his passing. And after he passed, I actually took on the church. I'm pastor in the church now. I have a choir, New York Fellowship Mass Choir. Also have New York Fellowship Children's Choir. And I still have the New Grace Tabernacle Church of God in Christ. Coach.
Come on.
So we thank God. I've been doing music for at least 25 years. So at least 25 years. So I'm just glad to still yet be here and in the number.
Amen. Amen. Man, I tell you, I look at so many things today, and I have such a level of appreciation. I have an appreciation for Pops and for Dad, man. I will, hopefully we'll get to talk about him. Got to talk about him today. and some of the things that he left and some of the things that you're still carrying on, and also the vision that God has given you to carry into the future. So I would love, as I remember our first meeting, when we first met, there's a good friend of ours, Michael McLean, and it was a church in, what's that, Hempstead? What's the name of the church? I know it was Christ, like Christ Holy Sanctified or something like that.
Five Baptized Holiness Church. My grandfather was the pastor.
Whoa, wow. That was Granddad's church. Wow, incredible. And he said, he kept telling me about you. He said, man, you gotta meet Davey. You gotta meet Donnie. You gotta meet, because they, all their names start with D. Davey, Donnie. He said, you gotta meet Derek. You gotta meet Dwayne. He said, I've been telling about you. You got to come to my church. I said, all right, man, I'm going to come. Man, I get there, and the living legend, Pastor Wright, is preaching, and Davey's on the organ backing him up. And I think at that time, it was Donnie on the drums, and Dwayne was playing the bass, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And I walk in, and I'm telling you, Dave, what was that? You had to be 17, 16, something like that.
I had just turned 20.
Jesus. Oh, I keep on thinking about my age. Lord have mercy, because I'm like two years behind. 16. There we go. And he is just wailing. I mean, it's like when you talk about ministry and you talk about vibe and you talk about the sharing between a preacher and a musician, I'm telling you, them boys, it's like they fit their father like a glove. Every word, every interlude, they hit him, and they smacked that church with a shout. And I was like, yo, who is that dude on the organ? Yo, I gotta meet these guys. And from that day, can I tell you, we literally went on to, they brought Pops to the church to meet me. They said, Dad, you gotta meet this guy from Long Island. He lived in our same town. We both grew up we both lived in Roosevelt at that time.
Yeah.
And, you brought Pops to the church. And from there, we will have our shed sessions, prayer sessions. That was during the season I was locking myself in the church trying to get them to pray with me. And we've been rolling ever since, and the Lord has just been moving in a mighty way. Some relationships have fell off, and we've lost some people, during this time, but we've still remained faithful to God as God has remained faithful to us, man. What are some of your memories, man?
Man, let me tell you about that first meeting, first time I met Q, y'all. Listen, we had just did this record, been there, done that, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yes, I was the main organist on it. That was nominated for a Grammy. And this is gonna be a lesson for a lot of people. I'm thinking like, yo, I'm hot stuff. I'm 20 years old. I'm killing. My brothers, I'm blazing organ. Everybody's just killing. So we had my grandfather's church, a little small church in Hempstead, across the street from Faith Baptist, J.J. Howard.
Wow, J.J. Howard.
And I'm playing, my father doing what he finished preaching, and we still going in. And my boy Mike McLean said, yo, my friend Quennel is here. And I see the little chubby kid sitting here. He said, yo, he can play. I'm like, okay, yeah, he can play. Yeah, let him play for offering. I said, I ain't letting him play for no offering. Man,
oh my God.
I'm thinking right, blah, 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 whatever that meant at the time. He said, yo, let him play, man, I'm telling you. And I said, come on, play. Quennel got on that organ and listened to me. We've been best friends ever since that day.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
wow.
Everything you can imagine. And he's like 15, 16 years old. I'm like, oh my, yo, where you from? That next day, we started hanging out just about every day that summer. Every day. His
wow.
Where's Bishop Church? In Freeport or Maryland?
Freeport, Long Island. Yep. Tabernacle of Faith.
The next, that was a Sunday afternoon. That Monday, I'm picking him up in my white Honda Accord. Come on, man, let's go.
Oh,
let's go.
Gosh. Wow.
And it taught me a lesson. Don't think that you because you got some accolades and different things that you all that. There's always somebody around that can help you, that can help better you. And that taught me an extreme lesson. And me and Quennel, we would share every day. And he would be doing more praying than playing. I'm like, yo, man, we here to play. We here to practice. Before we play, we got to pray, y'all.
Yeah.
And we would pray for hours and play for hours. The time would just get away from us. And next thing we know, it's nighttime. And we done got down to McDonald's down the corner.
Wow.
But it was a match made in heaven, man. God put that whole thing together.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Man, I tell you, one thing that I think about and I'm so proud of, and I want to get into, because I want the people to hear some of your testimony and hear about your transition from a musician to a pastor. You know, I want people to hear a little bit of what was that process like for you, because I know that you were in demand in Brooklyn and the surrounding areas, and even out of the state of New York, to play concerts and to just do revivals and various different things. So what was that like? Give us a little bit of like what introduced, like some of the things that happened that brought you to that place, what that transition was like.
Yeah. Well, I was traveling with my dad for years. Everywhere he went. Reverend Timothy Wright was not just a singer, he was a preacher. He did more preaching than singing. So his revivals, his concerts, I'm always with him. He didn't always take the whole band, but he always took me to be the organist. So when we would go places, I would meet different people, and I was satisfied with that. I was making good money. You know, he was taking care of me, and some revivals and concerts we did, the church would take care of me. That would bring my father for revival. That's how some of those were. And conferences and different things and workshops. So when the accident happened with my father, and all of a sudden he's not traveling anymore, I dedicated my whole everything to being by his side, keeping the church going, being right by his side. So I'm playing the organ still at the church while my dad is in the hospital, and running service from the organ, telling them what comes next, what to do next, who gonna raise the offering, this and that. Pop said that. And then when he finally passes, which he passed maybe about 9-10 months after the accident, 10 days after the funeral, they installed me pastor.
10 days.
10 days after the funeral. So now, and like I said, I was satisfied being a musician. I never wanted to pastor. So now I have to shift what I've been doing just about all my life and shift into a whole nother mode that I didn't think I was ready for. I found out that my father was preparing me for this even while I was playing for him. Preparing me for where I am right now, because it's no coincidence that I was with him everywhere he went. So I'm watching his every move. I'm seeing everything he does. I see how he prepares his sermons. I see how he prepares with the membership. And I was actually in 2008 supposed to move to Atlanta and be the minister of music at a prominent church there in Atlanta. And that didn't work out. I'm not going to say for some reason it didn't work out. God didn't allow it to work out so I could be in place to do what I'm doing today. And it was a journey, man, because now you have to explain to everybody how is this organist now our pastor? All we knew was David was the organist, and now he's our pastor. And it's hard for a lot of people. They say they're spiritual, but they don't look at everything in the spiritual way. They were looking at it in the natural. How is David the organist now the pastor? Nobody thought of it in the spiritual. But maybe it's something that God is doing. Everybody looked at it in the natural because, of course, I had my flaws, just like everybody. So when people don't really want you there, they'll highlight your flaws. So
that's good.
They highlight different flaws and different things, and that it's been now Some folks said I wouldn't last a month, I wouldn't last a year, and here it is 11 years later, and we're still going, and we're stronger than ever, even in the midst of a pandemic. The church is still growing. So when God has his hand on something, it's nothing nobody can do. It's mind-boggling. Why would God just out of nowhere take Reverend Timothy Wright? And, you know, I would love to have my father back right now. I'll still be on the organ cool playing. But when you're going from level to level, God has to make some kind of shifts. He has to shift things, and some of the shifts are uncomfortable. But you got to embrace the shift. And I thank God that I was able to embrace the shift.
Wow, man. Wow. I so celebrate you, and I applaud you, because I think that sometimes in life we don't understand why we go through what we go through. I think it's interesting. I was talking with my cousin today, and briefly I was saying, I feel a strong push, like the grace has always been there, but for forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that's needed. A lot of times people can't forgive themselves for what they've done. They can't forgive God. I believe in this season of pandemic, this pandemic that we're all going through in some way or another, we've all been affected. We've all lost loved ones, lost people who are close to us. But I think that people, not just from this pandemic, but even from past times, are still walking with unforgiveness of themselves for what happened, blaming themselves. Why couldn't I be there to stop this? And if God was so God, why would he let this happen? And I believe that forgiveness is needed. Forgive yourself. Forgive those who disappointed you, that you had great expectations. I was even talking, I think, in a broadcast before, Pastor, and I was saying, I don't even know if I said it to this degree, but I was mad at God for taking my father. I was mad at him and didn't recognize I was mad at him. And I had to understand, because my father was my hero. I don't know if you ever had sentiments and thoughts like that, because it's funny how it seems like we're never leveled to fight, because it's from one extreme to another. So you come out of one thing, and while coming out, here come another thing. And it's kind of compacted to where you got to deal one transition to another, one level of maturity, or one door, it opens up and it pushes you. And that's how I felt. I said, God, my dad was my hero. I said, how could you take my hero? Well, I didn't hear his last words. I didn't hear this. So Lord, what could possibly be your plan for my life in the midst of all of these things? Not knowing that God said, as long as your dad was here, your relationship would never be what I had preordained for it to be. So I have to remove your hero so that I can develop a relationship with you that you would have never imagined. No. And that's my testimony. And it sounds like Dave, that's Pastor, you can relate to that, to say that it wasn't all good, but all of it has been and is working for your good, because you love God. And these trials and tribulations and loss and anguish and grief and tears and sorrow and gloomy nights and depression that even comes on you from losing someone that you've ministered with and someone that you love. I don't know who we might be sharing, who we're sharing this with that's listening today, that can say the same thing. I've had loss. I've had one thing after another. But Lord, why? Because if you don't go through anything, you should never trust anybody's word that has not been proven. Don't ever trust nobody who ain't been through nothing. How you gonna tell me that you can survive and you can make it if you ran away from your practice? You ran away from what you were going through because the fire was too hot. You didn't like how it was burning you. You didn't like how it was scorching you. So you ran away from it instead of embracing it. But man, I believe that all of these things, through the fire, it produces pure gold. And that's what I see the Lord doing in your life, what he's doing in my life. He's really, he has produced a man of character, a man who loves his family. My brother, listen, y'all, my brother loves his family. loves his wife, loves his children. I've watched him interact, and it's amazing to see how he loves them and loves his people. I know, Dave, most people don't know, but I played for your church.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not just me, but my mom and my sister came. They came, followed me over.
Your mom would pray that place down.
Come on. Yeah, she got such she got such an anointing. But what we want to encourage you today, for those who are listening to my brother, and he's going to continue to share, because I got another question I want to ask him. But I wanted to take that opportunity to say that sometimes there are some things, there are some props, there are some crutches that come through people, places, and things that God has to remove. Because the truth is, you got to remove it. There's a glory that rests inside of you. The Bible says from faith to faith and glory to glory. So, it's interesting how your faith, you don't know where your faith stands until your faith is rocked, until there's a light, a beaming light that shines to show you how strong you are, even in the midst of adversity. And then there's a glory that God is determined to reveal in you, because the Bible says we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the glory of God may be revealed. And so I believe that, Pastor, what you went through, there was a glory that was being revealed from the songs that you've written. Y'all probably don't know, but my brother's a writer. He writes music. I never forget, what's the song that we did? It was with the Wright brothers. The first joint we did, man, we had everybody. Doobie Powell, everybody came down for that recording.
Like He Saved My Soul, or He Was There, one of them.
Oh my gosh, He Saved My Soul. Bro, what a beautiful song. And what's the first song? It was fast. It was a faster song.
Mighty God. We serve a mighty God.
We serve a mighty. Listen, y'all need to go get that record. My brother is a writer. He's a composer, he's an arranger, and I'm telling you, the glory of God that is being revealed in his life is absolutely amazing. And I believe, and I know with a surety, that the best is here for him, and the best is yet to come. Man, God, I really believe that, man, for your life. You've yet to see God's best concerning you. Which leads to my next question. With this pandemic that is going on in our world today, what have you seen as far as the church culture, the way we used to do things, and what do you see on the horizon? And like your church, for instance, what have you seen as far as the people being able to come to church, and now this pandemic with the social distancing putting us to where we can't gather that way? How has that benefited? How can you encourage maybe other men of God or other people, to just continue to go forward and keep trusting God?
Well, it's a twofold part to that, because with what's going on now, that we're not able to be in our sanctuaries, it increases your ability to have to expand your ministry. You gotta you have to do online ministry, and you have nothing to hide behind. Is if you ain't got it, it's gonna show you ain't got it right now. And what has helped me through this, because my first few years as pastoring, I'm not coming against nobody, but I'm glad that I did not have a musician that would push. The reason about that, I had to learn how to rightly divide the word of God without any antics or anything to go with that. I had to preach a flat-foot sermon for 35, 45 minutes on the word of God, and I couldn't hoop or holler my way out of it.
Woo! Wow.
I couldn't scream my way out of it. So it forced me to get into my word even more, my first 3 to 4 years of pastoring. So now when I finally do get a musician to come on, now he's just adding to what I've already got from God, what I've already learned to do. So now live thing, you really, if most of us are doing live and there's no audience to push you, there's no musicians, in some cases, no musicians to push you, and you can't really holler like you feel like hollering for the feedback of the audience. So you have to have real dialogue. You have to have real substance in your word now. So it's making people that have that fire for God study more. And then it's also showing up people who never had that fire for God. They falling back and just doing musicals. Doing,
that's good, man.
Doing all other kinds of things. Can you sit there and give the word of God with no extras, with no antics for a straight 45 minutes? And if you can't, then what have you been studying on all these years, all this time? So it has given preachers time to develop themselves even more, and it shows who has been, you can't fake the anointing.
Come on, that's right. That's right.
You can't fake the oil, and it's showing right now people who are able to withstand this. And also, I right when this pandemic started, I'm in New York, so this is the epicenter of it. We've had so much tragedy here and so much death here. So in the first part, when they told us that we can only have 50 people in church, I had people calling me, Pastor, make sure I'm on that list of 50, because I want to get in the church. Pastor, make sure I can get in. I don't want to come there and be turned away. And that was an eye-opener, because so many of us have taken for granted the opportunity to go into a church building and have service. And we've taken it for granted. So I'm hoping that fire comes back, that when we do get out of this, we don't have to beg folks to lift their hands. Because I told my wife, if anybody comes to church after this pandemic and they sitting there with their hands folded, they need to go see a doctor. Your house after getting through this pandemic, and they finally open the churches up, and you sitting in the church like God owes you something. So it should be a change in our people that would make us have a more fire to get inside of the house and really worship God the way we should. But other than that, the way we are now is you have to you have to have your own relationship with God, because you can't depend on, ain't nobody laying hands on nobody. Even after this, I don't know, some folks, I know folks in Brooklyn.
Virtual touch and agree.
I don't know what you got. They don't lay hands on me. I don't know. I don't want to get what you got. But this is the time. If you really have what you say you have, lay hands on yourself.
Sure. That's really good.
If you really got something deep down on the inside, because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be on the inside. Not on the outside, not all around you. It's supposed to be on the inside, something on the inside, working on the outside.
Oh, yes.
Or with a change in my life. So I'm praying that the people are developing their relationship with God. And I had to kind of fix somebody and say, yo, I know you probably wrote about 30 songs while we've been in this pandemic. I said, God bless you, man, but that writing songs really wasn't my focus. While I'm on this pandemic, I'm getting closer to God. If a song comes from that, I'm with it. But right now, I'm developing my relationship even more with God. Because when you're isolated and you're by yourself, you can really see not what's wrong with everybody else, but what's wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
You can see where you fall short. You're not isolated to see what's wrong with everybody else.
Come on, Pastor.
You're isolated to see you. Look in the mirror, and that's what a worship experience does. I worship best when ain't nobody around.
Come on.
I worship best in my car when it's just me.
Yeah.
So now we're isolated, and I don't like saying a shutdown. I call it a shut-in, because I have the organ in a shut-in.
Come on.
So that was a 3-day shut-in. I'm going on a 3-month shut-in. So I ought to come out of this with some more fire.
Come on. Yeah.
That's why I am with this pandemic, Q. It's it's got whatever's happening, it's gonna bring glory to God. Whatever's happening, it's gonna work out for our good.
Amen.
So here's a question, kind of connecting two dots here. When you first started pastoring, that was a kind of a huge transition and probably felt like isolation, because you mentioned like, hey, you know, you had people that just they weren't there for you in the respect of you being a pastor, and now you are in kind of the same isolation. Do you see, even on the spiritual side, a connection between how it felt at that moment where you're like, hey, I'm 10 days and like now my reality is totally flipped, and then compared to now, do you see like any similarity to those 2 points in your life?
Absolutely. Because when I became pastor, and I love my family, but even my family treated me different. Me and my brothers, we real tight, we real close. I mean, closer than I can ever imagine. But even some of my brothers treated me different. You're like, yo, now you ain't just regular Davey, you pastor now. So now, and this is kind of a good thing, when God elevates you, some people will respect where God has put you and not bring you down to them. So, yo, you can't hang out with us over here no more, because you this. So I'm like, yo, I can't really rock with them like I was overnight. I can't hang with musicians late night, eating all that stuff and talking crazy like musicians do. I couldn't do it now because, bang, I just shifted. So now, all of a sudden, and I had not developed a relationship with other pastors that felt comfortable enough to let the young buck in, because Church of God in Christ is an older church. Most of the pastors in Church of God in Christ are 60 and up. Wow. So here I am, just by myself. Wow. Yo, figure it out. Figure it out. And the only way I can figure it out is with God. I had to shut in with God, because everything in my life when I became a pastor, it was just a overnight shift. I don't know why some folks run to be a pastor. Wow. I don't understand why people chase that, because listen, when I tell you, you become, I was already a servant as a musician, but as a pastor, you are more of a servant. Now I got 150 members, and some folks look, okay, you got 150 people to serve you. No, you got 150 people to serve. Wow. When something happens to them, you got to be there. I found out real early in my ministry, somebody was in the hospital, and I didn't go. I called to make sure they was all right, and I didn't go to the hospital. Boy, I got ridiculed for that for a whole month. Wow. You mean I'm sick in the hospital, you won't come see me? You gonna call me? I said, well, I'm new at this. I thought if I checked on y'all good. But they want to see you. Yeah, they want to see you come through those doors and shake the hand. Pray for them. So I had to shift a lot of things, and I didn't have a lot of friends that were pastors at that moment. And that might have been a good thing too, because they could have molded me the wrong way.
Wow.
So quick question.
Go ahead, man.
So that's good. Okay, so for me, so my dad passed years ago, and my mom is still living, and they had this really distinct difference. My mom was one of those is like, when people are in the hospital, she's like, I'm gonna pray for them. I don't really like being in hospitals. And my dad was less in church, but anytime somebody was sick, even if he barely knew it, if it was a friend of my mom's, he's like, no, we need to go to the hospital. We need to see about them. Because he was one of those people that just, he wasn't afraid of the visual of hospitals, and he knew that people needed stuff because of his experience. So when you became a pastor and had to do those, was that extremely uncomfortable to have to go into those types of situations?
What made it uncomfortable, because I just came from taking care of my dad for almost a year. Mm-hmm. So I've lived in a hospital for just about a year. So the last thing I really want to do is be back in another hospital. Wow. So it made it rough, but people really, they don't, as your parishioners, they love you, but they really don't take in effect how you feel in regards to certain things. Like nobody would say, well, maybe he don't feel comfortable coming to the hospital. He was with his dad every day at a hospital. And, they don't take an effect of that. They just want what they want. And a mature saint will, but half of our churches aren't mature to that level. Wow. So they just want what they want when they want it. So I had to find a way to get strength to kind of be there for them. And I think I would have to pray and get strength to go to a hospital. Because watching your loved ones, see, my mom, she died instantly. She died the night of the accident. Right on the side of the highway. My nephew, he died the very next day. My father didn't die for another 10 months. So for 10 months, I'm at the hospital every day. I'm tired of hearing beeps. I'm tired of hearing machines going on. I'm tired of all this stuff and rehabilitation and all of that stuff. And then he's gone now. And then now you're a pastor, you got to go back into the same kind of hospitals and try to minister to somebody. So you have to have another level of strength from God to be able to handle that.
Woo. Well, you know,
think about that perspective.
No, not at all. You know what I think about? I think about as you were speaking, the issue that we're having, especially in that isolation period, the question that Anton was asking, you know, in that transition into pastoring, and then this pandemic, you know, that time of isolation where the Lord spoke to you. I think, you know, some of the issues that we as mankind are having today, my mentor would describe it as this. He said, well, if there's a problem with the male model in man, because man is a spirit that has a soul that lives in a body. But if there's a problem with the male model, there's something off with the wife. So you got the man, got the wife, and got the children. So then it's the family now. The family families make communities. And in our, this new day, our churches are normally in our communities. And so it's communities that make nation. So my mentor described it like this. He said, anytime you have a problem with the nation, which we do right now, we're having a problem with it with the nation and nations. He said, there's a problem in the community. Well, he said, if there's a problem in the community because there's something wrong with the effectiveness of the church in that community. If there's something wrong in the community, that means there's something wrong in the family. If there's something wrong in the family, that means that there's something wrong with the wife. If there's something wrong with the wife, that means there's something wrong with the husband. And if there's something wrong with that husband or that man, it's because he has an issue with God. And there are so many people who are going through so many things because they have an issue with God. They don't want to embrace the transition, embrace what God is doing as far as the fire of their life, as far as removing things. Like I heard what you said. You said, you know, I couldn't hang with the musicians like I wanted to. I couldn't do certain things that I used to, even with my family. And I believe that there are some people who are, you know, they're going through some things right now to where they, even myself in some ways, would like it to be the way it was. But the truth is that there can be a danger in the way that it was. It can be some things that are off, you know, that are really off center. And I believe that the Lord wants to be the center again. And the funny thing about a parent is, or in this case, God, he has many children, but there will be many people who will not acknowledge him as father. And so I believe in this time that God is calling, God is beckoning through situations, through things, because he's trying to mess with the norm, because in the norm, he was not present. See, there's a whole bunch of people that call on the name of the Lord. I'm finding out, David. They call him pastor. They call in his name, but their hearts are far. And God has a way, like, you know, in this time, what the Lord has been showing me, he said, son, he said, what you used to do with the season that I'm taking you to, it's not going to work. The stuff that you have here, it's not going to work for the next season. And so he said, the next season that is literally beckoning to you, pulling, is pulling you to it, is literally shining a light on the norms that you have gotten comfortable with and made a part of your life that will cause you to forfeit your destiny. And I believe that this is what the Lord is doing and speaking to us in the way that he's speaking to us. Like you said, I got more in his presence, and the Lord began to just reveal himself. I've been dealing with the Lord. It ain't been about writing songs, but it's been about really getting close to God. And I really believe that the issue that we're having in our world today is because we have men who have turned away from God. And God is trying to get us to about face. So he's messing with every normal, everything that you have ever considered normal in your life. Because I found out that you could be in church, Pastor, for a whole bunch of years and hear about God, but never meet the God that you've heard about. You've never had an encounter. You never had an opportunity to where you really seen a need for the God that you heard of, the God that you play shouting music behind. This is for musicians, and even pastors. There's pastors that are preaching and something is wrong with their faith level. No, you get a check. The people take care of you. That's not faith. That's not faith, But I really believe that God is pulling us back to a place to where our soul need, the old song, I think it's Andre Crouch, Jesus is the answer for the world today. You know what I mean? And so in the midst of everything that we're going through, he is in it. Just like he was with you and everything you went through. He was with me through everything I went through everything we're going to go through. The Bible says that we're living in the last days. So I believe we're going to see some good things in the sense of this fire, this purification, this separation of goats and sheeps. Oh my goodness. But there's some stuff that we ain't seen what we're about to see, because what we have known this world to be, it will never really be again. And it must happen because the Bible prophesies itself. And so if you can't deal with these things and allow the Lord to settle your spirit with what you're going through, with what you're coming out of, with what you're coming through, with the things that you have to let go in surrendering and submitting to him, I don't know what you're going to do in the coming days. If you can't like you said, lay your hands on your head for a headache, lay your hand, really trust the power of God that he's placed in you. You are anointed. You are the church. And do you not know that your body is the temple of the living God and the Holy Spirit dwells within you? It's time for that power to rise up in you. And so we really got to know God in this season for ourselves. So, man, what you're saying, man, I believe is true. I know it's true, and I know it's blessing somebody today, man. So, man, God bless you so much, man, for your ability to endure and continue to persevere this time. Man, you know what I wanted to ask you about? You were telling me about how the church has grown more in this pandemic as far as the audience, the people that you've been able to reach. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that blessed me.
In the midst of this, we've always been doing Facebook Live and different Instagram Live and all that kind of stuff, even before this happened. So we would get maybe 200 viewers, 250 viewers. And then we have in our congregation, between our services, we probably have maybe between 100 and 150 people in church. So since this pandemic, we're checking our views. We're getting upwards of 1,000 views one Sunday, 1,500 views the next Sunday, up to 2,000 views. And more people are now tuning in on live than would come into your church. They're looking on their phone, they're looking on their computers, and we've had people accept Christ online. We have people get saved online, become members online. And I challenge my church, because a lot of times people don't, sheep, the Bible says, my father always told me in the Bible, sheep beget sheep.
That's right.
So I challenge my members to try to get people to come to church with them. They found it hard to do that, you know, with our church being in the neighborhood that it's in. That's the excuse a lot of people would make. You know, we right in the middle of Crown Heights, and some people can't come from so far and different things. And a lot of times people don't invite them to their church because they really don't want them to see how they act in church, because how they act in church don't add up to how they see them at their job.
Come on, man. Come on.
That's why they don't invite folks to church. Look, I don't want to, you come to my church, you see me shouting, then you see me cussing on Monday at the job. So it's easier for them to invite them online because they ain't got to sit with them. They can praise God and they ain't got to be judged and looked at. So I have members that are inviting people online that wouldn't invite them to the church and when we was in the doors. So God has just been growing the ministry that way. And it's been exciting to see how God is using this for his glory. And most churches, if you're set up right, we've been set up for online giving for 5 years. We've been giving online. When it was frowned upon by my church, Church of God in Christ, they said, oh no, we don't put no credit card machine in the church. That's the devil. No, we don't put no, they was given on the website 5 years ago. And they're like, no, we don't do that. This is the Church of God in Christ, or Church of God in Cash, as somebody would say.
Come on, man, come on.
But now, since we had implemented that 5 years ago, 90% of my church was already given that way. So it's also, you know, it gives people, a lot of the older pastors, and I don't want to come across a wrong kind of way, but a lot of the older pastors have to embrace the same message but a new method. God is forcing, he's literally forcing people that did not want to be online, that did not want to do things this new way. God is forcing it now. And those that caught on to it a little earlier, they right in step. We haven't lost a beat financially. So thank God.
Amen. Amen. Wow. That is amazing. And every time I think about it, I think about so much, you know, the Bible says that my people, they didn't say the world. He said my people. Yeah. My people perish because of a lack of knowledge. And I really believe that this is a time to where, like, even the millennial generation, it's about practicality. A lot of young people, unless they grew up in church, and then even some of that, you know, don't crucify me on this, but some of that, there was still a misunderstanding of the oil, a misunderstanding of the anointing. The millennials definitely don't understand these things. They don't understand speaking in tongues. My son, like, you know, most people don't even understand basic things about, like, for instance, I thought it was amazing, and I think we need to go back to this practicality, practical teaching. I love what you were saying. I had to stand flat-footed in preaching. I couldn't hoop and get into these things. I had to teach. We need more teaching and more people to be writing and beginning to go in and take what's being taught and begin to go before the Lord and fine-tune so that God can literally lift us to the positions that he has for us, the places that he wants us to be in politics, the places that he wants us to be in law, the places that he wants us to be in various different business sectors and things, and not just be effective as a deacon and an elder of the church. Nothing is wrong with that. But you could be a deacon and an elder in the church, and then at the end of the day, once you leave the church, you have no value. You know, you ain't helping nobody. You know, nobody can be affected by your witness because all you know is taking up the offering, holding the bucket, ushering the people to their seat. All you know is shouting music as a musician. All you know is church politics. But there is a world that controls our laws that affect our school systems. These are things that I'm getting into, that my eyes are being open to, and I'm saying, okay, Lord, you just didn't call me to be a musician. This, my gift that is making room for me, but it's literally putting me in a place to affect my community, affect my state, affect legislation. I think one thing that we miss today in our church is the ecclesia means called out ones. It literally comes as like a type of senate. So when Jesus was speaking, he was literally speaking in kingdom terms. These kingdom terms are not like our democracy. They're very different. You know, this ain't a constitution of for the people, by the people. This is the thing that the Lord speaks, God speaks, and whatever is decreed out of the king's mouth becomes law. And so where, like my son, he don't understand lordship and all of these things. To be honest, that's a millennial or whatever they call it in the day, whatever that thing is. They got all these new names for each generation that's born. But like most older people don't understand what king means. Most older people don't understand what a lord is. Because if we understood what a king means, when does a servant of the king or someone who is under kingship fight with the king to try to get his or her way? Mm-hmm. I've never seen so many different discrepancies or argumentative. How do you argue with a king? In a kingdom, does a particular person under the king's rulership tell the king what he or she is not going to do? Now, that's just kingship. Lordship means a person over property. That's where we get the word landlord from. And I'm saying these things because when I say, son, do you know what the Lord, you got to serve the Lord. I said to him a couple of weeks, I said, son, we're living in some interesting times. I said, this ain't like it used to be. I said, are you saved? He said, nah, Dad, I'm not. You know, it ain't what it used to be. I remember when he gave his life to the Lord, but I've seen some things and I'm saying, wow, that's not lordship. He don't understand what the Lord means. I said, do you know the Lord, son? He said, no. No, Dad, I really don't. He said, what is Lord? I said, the Lord is literally a person over property that gives it to you. In this case, the Lord is one who basically has a plan for your life and tells you what to do. And you follow him. I said, do you follow the Lord? Do you hear the Lord? You know what he said to me? No. It's sad to say, but some of our older saints, when the Lord speaks to them, they don't follow him either. Right. So we need some teaching. We need to really go back and redefine some words because there's some things that we've been doing that doesn't make any sense. It's fruitless. We see so-called effectiveness in certain things in church, but outside, you're a teacher, but you don't tell people about the God that you serve. You're a musician, but beyond your instrument, you have nothing to say unless it's foolishness and folly. Something is wrong with that. You're a preacher, but the politicians don't know you. Senators don't know you. Legislation don't know you. You can't walk in a meeting and you have respect to your character. There's something on your name that causes people to listen to what they do with the money that's funneled through the government. Man of God, how in the world are you going to be the king that God has called you to be? Woman of God, how are you going to be the queen that God has called you to be? And you don't know the power that you possess. You succumb to, I hope I don't sound crazy. We succumb to poverty. We succumb to gentrification. We succumb to racism. We succumb to all of these things like we are natural people having a spiritual experience. That's out of order. Yeah. My brother and my sister, we are spiritual beings having a natural experience. We have never been limited to the money that's given to us by government because we have a father who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and the world that dwell therein. So yeah, you might hate me because of the color of my skin. You might try to put me out, but guess what? The anointing on my life that produces ideas. He said, I'll bless the works of your hands. I got inventions and things. Come on, we need some people today that are not afraid to get with God, to get something that's going to serve people. That's going to cause you to have some type of economic status that when you speak, people have to listen. Not just be people who are churchy, but have influence today. Yeah. So I really believe that this is a time, there are going to be millionaires that's going to be birthed out of here. Me and Antoine, we're working on some stuff with Stay the Course to teach. We want to get, we want to. See, I'm learning we got to change our speech today. It's not we want to. We're going to be effective in the school systems. That's what God placed on my heart. I want to take Stay the Course into the programs, the musical programs that are dying, the musical programs that are being literally done away with. I want to go into the communities and the Boys and Girls Club and build my own Boys and Girls Club. Come on, somebody, to really be able to impact the world with the culture of God, with the custom of God, with the belief of God, with the morale of God. Because in our churches, our morality has dropped. Our morality has dropped. Our ability to imagine things that outweigh what we have been fed on a daily basis. Where's our dreams? Where's the God mind that works through us as vessels? We're available. God, work through me. Think through me. Your ways are not my ways. I see working on a job for 30 years, working on a job for 20 years. I see employment, but God sees deployment. God is ready to deploy some people. He's ready to send you. He wants you to be effective in Dubai. He wants you to be effective in Sri Lanka. He wants you to go to these places to establish kingdom, colonize for his honor, for his glory. So I'm really praying that in this time and in the time to come, that we don't get stuck in the four walls of the church. We really begin to work on missionaries and really work on missions and really work on feeding homeless, because that's Matthew 25. I was hungry. You gave me something to drink. I was thirsty. I was thirsty. You gave me some drink. I was hungry. You gave me something to eat. I was a stranger. You invited me in. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Come on. It's time for us to just go to another place. So my heart is stirred as I think about that, because that's what's burning in me to do for the Lord, so he will be glorified, man.
That's good, man. You gotta speak it, man.
Yeah.
And you've always been the one to talk. You would speak it and make sure. No, ain't no Mike. We ain't Mike gonna do this.
No, we gonna do this. Yeah, and that's where we need to be now. To where we stop embracing the media. Stop embracing input determines output. Something on the inside working on the outside, but it's what that comes out through the conscious mind, that goes into your subconscious mind, that causes you to dream of it. Dream of negativity. Dream of being the tail and not the head. Dream of being beneath and not above. That's not God's word. It's time for God's people to be empowered to know who they are. Yeah, you're going to act the fool and you're going to act the monkey, but I know that the word of God says that he's the Prince of Peace, and I'm to follow peace with all men. I'm supposed to be a maker of peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God, the sons of. You want to have an attitude, you want to see it that way. I see above. I see through the eyes of faith. I see God's morality. I see God's character. I see God's integrity. I see God's faithfulness. I see God's way of doing things. There's a way that seems right, but that end, man, has been leading to some funny fruit that ain't good for us. So I pray for us, my brothers and my sisters who are listening to this today, that as we're moving from this pandemic and as we're moving into what God has for us, that we start speaking those things that are not. Don't go back into how am I going to make it? Well, okay, I'm going to say this, I'm done with this part. I promise you, I was going back and forth to Virginia, working at a church there. And I would literally go 16 hours for a weekend. Literally. Go down 8 hours to get there, 8 hours to get back. And the Lord began to speak to me. He said, son, he said, I'm going back to what I told you when you were 17. You remember Pastor Phyllis Gates, Pastor David Gates, God rest his soul, mother. Yeah. She's the one who prophesied to me at 17 and said, your name is going to be in lights. And to God be all the glory for the word and everything he's doing to bring it to pass, even when I don't understand, even when I don't feel like I want to give him everything. But the Lord said when I was going to Virginia, he said, well, son, he said, the prophet prophesied to me. He said, your name is going to be in lights. Your music going to be everywhere. He said, the world going to know who you are. He said, you ain't going to have to worry about money. You ain't going to have to worry about this. God's going to make you influential, boom, 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 boom. And I asked God a question. I said, God, how are you going to do this? David, that's what I asked him, Pastor. I said, how are you going to do this? And he said, in your question, you answered it. He said, say it slow. This is after 3 months of pondering. This word that came when I was going through something, a time of isolation, a time of almost bewilderment, a time of refining, a time of misunderstanding, a time of just vacillating between certain things. And he said, ask the question 3 months later, slow. I was in a hotel room at the Marriott there in Richmond. And he says to me, ask it slower. I said, how are you going to do this? He said, do you get it now, son? The question you asked, the answer was in it. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen by my spirit. It's not by might, your might, it's not by your power, but it's by my spirit, says the Lord. And so I really believe, man, in this time that God is about to manifest some things. We're going to make it because it's by his might, it's by his power, it's by his spirit. We're going to be sustained. We're going to be kept. He's going to bring us through. The steps of a righteous man is ordered by the Lord. He has a plan for you, my brother and sister. He has a purpose for you. You will not be defeated. We ain't going to see if we're going to get the victory. The victory already belongs to us. Speak that, right. Declare that, and stand on the word of the Lord, because God is not a man that he should lie. Neither is he the son of man that he should repent. If God said it, shall he not do it? If God spoke it, shall he not bring it to pass? And so I stand on that today, and I pray that my brothers and sisters that are listening will stand on the same thing.
And so Pastor David, so one of the things that I do is I take a bunch of notes. There's always so much content and information. And then right now, I kind of want to connect some things, because we talked about how, we're online now. And the fact of the matter is, we're online and we now have the potential eyes and ears of more millennials and more, I think it's Generation Zers or whatever is after millennials. And, Quennel made the statement. He's like, well, do you know the Lord? And the crazy thing is, the way even millennials were taught the Lord was just from experience and watching people do stuff. There wasn't. I talked to a friend of mine a couple years ago, and she was like, "Man, I remember going to church every Sunday, and we would shout and have so much. We would just be, such a great experience." And she says, "Now, when I walk around 10 years later, I don't remember a single sermon that was preached, but I remember us shouting. I remember us doing these things." So now again, we're pushed into being primarily online. And at this point, how do we, and I don't know if you've considered this, but how do we effectively start to teach lordship, relationship with God? How do we start to connect to those people that still, even after the season, they're not showing up to nobody's church, especially because they know, I can log in. I don't have to put my finger up to leave the building now. I can just exit your live. How do you start to create and teach those people? And you said the same message but a different method. Have you considered in this season, like, how you're going to, I don't even want to say leverage, but that's what it is. How are you going to leverage these new connections to be able to give them something that they may not get unless they get it through your life?
Yeah, that's real good, man. Well, growing up, see, I'm not a millennium. I'm right before them. I was born in 78. So they really, me growing up in church, they didn't teach the kids relationship. They taught us church.
Yeah.
So they taught, I know how to, if you get ready to walk and go out to church, put your finger up. On first Sunday, make sure you wear your white or your black and all that stuff. We learned all the religious things and things of that nature, but they never really focused on relationship with God.
Yeah.
So in order to really reach these millennials, we got to let them know it ain't about what you wear.
Yeah.
It ain't about how you wear your hair. It's about your relationship with God.
Yes.
You develop your relationship with God. And if your relationship with God convicts how you dress, then that's all right. But we were convicting people how they dress and all of these different things and teaching them church things and never really teaching them to develop that relationship with God. These millennials, they ain't worried about, they don't wear, my son ain't wore a suit to church in a year.
Wow.
They wear jeans, they wear their shirts, and my daughter too, you know. So they're not worried and focused. It might be a good thing. They're not focused on the church antics and the things, you know, gotta have on this and that. My daughter came to me and she said, Dad, I really love God, but I'm just not with all that extra stuff. And I'm like, well, what do you mean the extra stuff? You know, people rolling on the floor and foaming at the mouth. And I said, she asked me, does it take all that stuff? I said, I had to really minister to her. I said, look, if you develop the relationship with him, sometimes you'll get emotional, but some of that stuff ain't relationship. Some of that's for a show. And these people don't want the show. They really want just the relationship with God. So on this online platform, we have to push that relationship with God. Develop a relationship with God. There ain't nobody online for you to develop a relationship. Because sometimes folks join the church. I got so sick of this. Folks joining the church and they want to get close to my wife and they want to get close to me. And they want to, I want to be in that auxiliary. What auxiliary you in right now? Online. That's your auxiliary.
Come on, bro. Come on.
Behind auxiliary, then hide behind people in church, inside of a church summit. But now there's no hiding. You got to tap in straight to God. You got to develop your relationship with God. So that's how we can really embrace this thing for the millennials. Help them to develop that relationship with God.
That's good. Ooh, that's good.
So, and then speaking on relationships, one of the topics that we were going to discuss was the fact that, you know, you're a pastor, but then before then you were musician to pastor, then had to become preacher, minister, teacher without a musician. So can you tell us like more about your relationship as it relates to being a pastor and then finding musicians or being able to train the right music, however you want to talk about that relationship?
Yeah, you see, all of my life, I'm really old school. I'm from a church called Washington Temple, Church of God in Christ, and that's where the late Bishop F.D. Washington was the pastor. So my father was his musician for over 20 years. So I was able to see the relationship between a pastor and a musician because I saw my father doing it for Bishop. So now my father becomes a pastor. He puts me on his 3-day shut-in. Now I develop a relationship as his musician from what I seen him doing for his bishop. So what I was doing when I become pastor, I'm looking for me in the next musician.
Yeah.
And God told me, look, you're not going to find you. You are not going to find you. And then that helped me to realize musicians, a true minstrel is hard to find. You can find musicians that can play, but for a musician that understands a house and how to flow, it is so hard to find. And I would cry. I was, you know, all these musicians out here, none of them, I mean, all y'all can play, but can't none of y'all flow? Can't none of y'all flow with the house? It's more than just shout music.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to be able to flow with the house. Can't none of y'all just see where the passion's going and just tap into that. And when I stopped worrying about it, you know, most of the time I would find myself playing half of the service for myself because my wife is the praise and worship leader, and she's tough.
Oh yes.
Good God Almighty. So a lot of the musicians, if they did not, first of all, in order to be a true minstrel, you got to have a relationship with God. You can't gig at the clubs on Saturday night and then think you're gonna come in and usher the presence of the Lord in the house. No, it don't work like that. So she can tell that they wasn't there, so I would have to get on there and play to get it where it's going. Then I get off, and then the musician would play for me. But then the service was kind of swooped back down because it's so much. Our services are driven so much by that sound. The sound got to be right. If the sound is off, it creates a chaotic atmosphere.
Yeah.
So when I stopped looking for it, God sent it. God just sent, when he sent Quennel to us, I thank God that was some of the highest times we've had. And then I would have other musicians that would be there watching him. Now you can watch, but until you live what he lived, you can't just see. People think they can watch it and just duplicate it. No, there's a life that comes with it.
Yeah.
So I started just praying, and I said, God, whoever you send, just make sure they have the right spirit. Even if their talent doesn't match up, if their spirit is right, we can get around it and we can make it do what it do. And God has blessed us that we've been able to have people come and help us out in our music ministry.
Wow.
So, and either one of y'all can answer this, I suppose, because I don't know that even the people that are listening may have like a good clarity on when we say minstrel. Like what are some of the characteristics, and not even a definition per se, but like what do you feel some of the characteristics of a minstrel is versus maybe just a musician? I know that one was a tough one.
Well, I mean, yep.
Thank you.
Yep. No, you first.
Well, I feel we have plenty of musicians. You know, you have jazz musicians, you have rock and roll musicians, all those kinds of musicians. But a minstrel can shift the atmosphere. A minstrel can help God float through the room. A minstrel can understand where God is moving, what God is trying to do. Just a normal musician is just looking for his chance to shine. When is it time for me to do what I do? When is it time for me to do what I'm paid to do? See, you can pay a musician. You cannot pay a minstrel. Wow. You cannot pay. There's no salary base for the anointed. There's no salary. See, according to the musician scale, if you can play this much, if you went to this school, you were able to get this. But how can you put a charge or put a pay scale on the anointed one? Wow. So when you have a musician that's a minstrel, you are just extremely blessed. And the Bible says, honor them. We need to honor minstrels. Because musicians come a dime a dozen. Minstrels don't. Yeah. So that's the difference for me when it comes to a minstrel.
Wow. I think I love what Pastor said. I've seen a couple of different situations. I've seen people who are educated. I've seen people who are trained. I've seen people with technique. I've seen people who are going to be on time. I've seen people who have the particular ethics, but at the end of the day, they're not tapped in. They're not on the frequency. So in certain parts of the service, they're going to do well, or they're going to do the job. But if you're looking for any extra, if you're looking for the Spirit of God to move, if you're looking for the song of the Lord to be birthed, they don't have a clue, because that's not a place where they live. That's not a realm where they live. And I know from experience, I've been blessed, and then it's interesting, 19 churches. I counted them. David, I don't know if I never told you that. I don't play for 19 churches.
Wow.
In 20-something years. And I've seen a lot. I've seen skilled musicians. I've seen certain things. I've seen certain things as far as resumes. I've seen those things. I've seen great engagements, great touring. I've seen premier artists and things. But when it came to flow that you were speaking of, they didn't know how to do that. And so I think this is so interesting because I've seen minstrels who have the flow, but maybe don't have the technique. I think that's very interesting. But they have a flow. They know skill, they said David had was he knew what to play and when to play it. So you have people who have vocabulary, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a minstrel, because they don't know when to play. Like you shouldn't be shifting into a shout when God wants everybody to fall out and fall prostrate before him. Now you're ready to shout. That's not being a minstrel, And so I think that there are some things that a minstrel has in character. Character to me is different, though. I want to say this because I think somebody needs to hear this if you haven't heard it before. God has a particular script for your life before you ever get here. One of the things, Pastor, that I was reading is Psalm 139. And in Psalm 139, there's a particular passage in Psalm 139 that speaks of there is a book that has been written about your life. I'm blown away by this. Literally, every detail that God has purposed for your life to do has been written in the book. So your whole entire life has been set. When you look at actors, when you look at people like Steven Spielberg or Tyler Perry, these different directors that get actors, you get an actor or a particular person who's skilled to play a particular role. That's what character is in a sense. Character plays a particular role. They don't play other people's roles. They play their specific role. You're not going to be drama-filled and then be tough man in the same particular movie. You're going to stick. And I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that there is a book written about your life that has a specific character that you were created to be. And I think that's the minstrel. Minstrels are ones that have accepted or learning how to accept the will of God for their life to the detail that I want to do this, but the Lord is saying, submit to this. I want to do this, but the Lord is saying, that's not what I have for you, because in 5 years, that's going to lead you to this, and that's going to take you away from me. I've created you to birth a sound of heaven into the earth. So character and understanding the role that you were created to play, not nobody else. Because when you play your role, there is nobody like you in the whole wide earth. There's no competitors. You stand alone in the character that God has designed you to operate in.
So check this out. So as y'all were sharing those things, I started to think about the fact of how many church musicians became church musicians. And that process of, and I would almost say that like 100% of church musicians started out playing the drums. And there was this moment where it was like, okay, well, shoot, we got 5 drummers on the front row. I need to pick a different instrument. It's funny because even in that process, when you think of the older, like kind of like the predecessors of music in the church, there was no process of going through becoming a minstrel. It was like musicianship in church was kind of like people that grow up in the hood or in impoverished areas, and it's like, boy, you ain't gonna be in them games. You're gonna find a sport to play. So in the church, it's like, hey, you ain't gonna just sit and go to sleep. You're gonna find an instrument to play. But there was no process, and maybe this is something we have to work on, but there was no process of becoming the minstrel. You just became the musician because it was a matter of playing what was there, learning what was there, accompanying. There was no Sunday school for minstrels, where it's like, okay, musicians, you be here at 9 o'clock. We're going to talk ministry through music before service starts at 10. It was just, okay, hey, you're going to play this choir song. You're going to play the drums on this one. Hey, you can try to play keyboard this week, or whatever the case may be. But there was no process, and still today, possibly no process that converts these youth that are musicians into becoming minstrels so that they can have their flow. And we were watching a video a while back. Quennel was playing for somebody, and almost everybody Quennel plays for gets this opportunity to flow like almost never before, where they get to sing. And I think I've told you this. I'm like, people get to sing their shower songs when you play. So like all the stuff that they would do in the shower that they can't do with any other musicians or minstrels, they get to do. Like once he hits the keys, they're like, oh, I'm gonna sing every note on the scale. If you don't follow me, I'm gonna be able to flow. And it's like, okay, how do you build that? And then we know some of the process through prayer, but again, we became musicians, but were never taught to be minstrels until we had maybe an aha moment, or we might have had the right teacher that understood, hey, you're going to play these instruments, but you have to understand who you're playing to and why you're playing, versus, hey, I got chops and stuff. And then I think that may be disconnect.
Man, dude, that's the God honest truth. Because I started out playing drums.
Oh yeah,
come on.
But when I was playing drums, my brother Donnie was already playing, and my little brother Derek, then he started playing. And after I heard Derek, I said, later for this. This is done. But to create a minstrel, and you said it so perfectly, we have kids after service, everybody's kid is on something, beating on something, playing on something. So with my father being who he was, all of us, we all had some kind of music ability. So to see, and that's why I thank God for what my father did. He saw the music ability, and he didn't just say practice. But what he said, I'm gonna put you on a 3-day shut-in. This is a true story. My father locked me in the church for 3 days and told me to play for an hour and pray for an hour. And I was 16 years old. I didn't want to do it. I thought I was gonna be the next Michael Jordan. Well, I thought. But he said, play for an hour and pray for an hour. And I'm looking at all the other young kids that are learning to play. They just come after service and just beat on the instruments. Why I'm the one to play for an hour and pray for an hour, and I'm locked in the church. I'm spending the night with rats in the church. I got to go to the church, go to school from the church and come right back. I couldn't eat hamburgers. I had to eat crackers and water. I ate up all the communion that we had for 3 days. And in them 3 days, that's when God put something in me that I could not get from school, that I could not get from YouTube. They ain't have YouTube. Now you can look on YouTube and watch how somebody, I couldn't get it from all of these things. That minstrel, being that minstrel, you have to develop that with God. And churches weren't doing that. I was surprised because there was a little disgruntlement between my mom and my dad. My mom, we living in Long Island, and my mom like, yo, why you got this boy locked in the church in Brooklyn? And my father said, God told me to do it. So it takes an extreme sacrifice, and you got to really know that you heard God to lock your son up in Brooklyn, New York for 3 days in the church. And say, play for an hour and pray for an hour. And that's what God did, what he did for me in that 3-day shut.
Well, you know what, Pastor, I think what Antoine was saying, we need to really work on this. And we just got a couple more minutes. But I think we need to work on this because it's very, very true. There are some things that I believe that are presented, of course, that seem more appealing. You know, it seems more appealing to learn, you know, for those who can't, and I understand. You learn on YouTube, you know, you start playing, you start learning chord progressions, you build a vocabulary, you become the so-called whatever in your city. And so literally you're you know, a big fish in a pond instead of some type of fish in the ocean, which is much bigger than that pond. But everybody looks at you, everybody, you know, you are the man. When you walk in, people are like, yo, guess who here? Yo, it's on today, you know? And so there's this paradigm of, or this mindset of, yo, I want to tour and play for Gaga, Lady Gaga. I want to play for Beyonce. I want to play for these people, you know, and so this becomes the trend, you know, well, the nicer I get, the more money I make, the more salary I have, you know, these things now become stuff that you want to go after. You know, when I want to do records, I want to be like, you know, Mike Burrell or Kevin Bond, and bro, much, you know, of course, you know, we respect those people. I love all of these people. I had conversations with all of them. But at the end of the day, how many of us have taken time to break that mold? Because I believe it's a mold. It's a way of operation that from generation to generation, they see the person at the big Church of God in Christ convention. They see the person planning to stay. I want that. But wanting these things, it doesn't make you not know God if you have those, for those who have been capable to operate on both spectrums and still have the ability to turn off, turn on, and bring a set of spiritual precedent. But for those people, we got to break the mold, because there's this mold. There ain't a mold of fasting no more. There ain't a mold of praying no more. And I'm talking about, I found out that you can ask a lot of questions, but just because you ask a lot of questions don't mean you're going to get the right answer. So my mentor would say, the right answer will never hide from the right question. So in prayer, you can literally pray and ask amiss. And I think sometimes as musicians, we have not been taught how to pray. We haven't been taught about the will of God. So our, you know, the things that we desire, the things that we want to chase after, it has nothing to do with God's will, his way. It's just, I see that, I want that, and I want that now. But if you're going to be a minstrel, it comes over time. It comes with a weeding away, Pastor, like he was saying. It comes with a taking away. It comes with I can't hang out. Because I remember I used to shut myself in the church. I would willfully. Nobody locked me up. I lock myself up. Because I said, yo, God, I said, I suck, man. I need to get better. Because it's interesting. I don't know how many musicians may have this, because it's a little bit of a different time in some ways, unless you live in the country or something like that. But the only kind of bounce off or people I had to talk to literally was myself. I didn't have other friends that were musicians that either could play or couldn't play that could say, Q, yo, you doing really good. So to me, with hearing the things I would hear in certain, man, I sucked. Not knowing until I met Pastor Wright and Derek and Donnie, and like, yo, Q, you got something. Oh, I didn't know. So that pushed me to prayer when nobody else, I didn't have anybody else to bounce and say, to have a measuring stick to say, yo, I'm doing okay. So that was what God wanted. So he allowed me not to have nobody else, because it was going to push me to where I couldn't get caught up in the hype. Yo, you sweet, you nice, you dope, because God was setting that minstrel path for me and not just that musician path for me. And still today, I'm not into the musicals. I'm not into certain things that people like to do. I'm really not interested. You know what I want to do? I keep on saying it. I want to do Quennel, Gaskin, and Friends with Dave Matthews Band, with Robert Glasper, with Richard Bona. You know what I'm saying? With John Legend, with a 200-voice choir, with dancers, with a 50-piece orchestra, with the 20-piece arenas and stadiums and all over the world. I want to do open air things where millions of people come and we feed them naturally so that we can give them God. That's what I want to do. Wow. I want to usher the presence of God to where healing, folk, I see it in a vision. Pastor Wright, I believe we're coming back to this. My goodness, if I ever felt that there was a time to where signs and wonders are going to follow them that believe. There's such a sound of heaven that I believe that's being released in the earth to us. And the more we wait before God, God is going to come in and folk will get out of wheelchairs again through the power of music. Folk going to get healed of polio and multiple sclerosis, and people are going to get healed of cancer. And I've seen cysts drop, ovarian cancer drop as people use ladies feel their breast, and the breast cancer begins to leave, the lump begins to leave, diabetes is going to be healed. This is minstrel thinking, because that's what, okay, so let me say this. What God wants to do is he wants to get all our stinking thinking out the way, all our low thinking out the way about what God can't do, about what he can't deliver, about how he can't operate because of this and because of that, to say, Lord, I'm available to you. So God, I come before you and I ask that you would use me, flow through me, operate through me. I yield my mind to you, my imagination. The greatest nation in the world, my mentor says, is the imagination. Image nation. You can only get or be what you can see. If you can't see it, you can't have it. And so I believe the imagination of the minstrel, God is ready to think through us to see that in arenas and places and waterfronts and outside places with roadies and endorsements and people who sponsor, God can move and the baby is filled with the Holy Ghost on the street and revival takes place. And it's just a breakout of God's power. That's minstrel behavior. And I believe that's a God thing that he wants to think and begin to manifest throughout yielding to him. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
So yes, Pastor, if you could, man, in our closing, where people can connect with you if you have anything coming up or are available, where people need to, tell them what they need to know about your Instagram and everything like that, please.
Yes, you can connect with me on Instagram at Pastor DW3. Those are my initials, David Wright 3, Pastor DW3 on Instagram. You can also connect with me on Facebook at New Grace Tabernacle. You just go to New Grace Tabernacle Christian Center, and that's our church. We're located in Brooklyn, New York, 1745 Pacific Street, also known as Reverend Timothy Wright Way, 1745
Come on.
Pacific Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11213. You can connect with me on Twitter. People still do Twitter,
Yes, they do.
Pastor DW3 on that as well. Pastor DW3 on that as well. So everything about my online stuff is usually Pastor DW3. So Instagram and Twitter, the same tag, and on Facebook, David Wright and New Grace Tabernacle. You can connect with me. And we have some we got a new single that's out right now.
Oh, yeah, it's hot, y'all. Go get it.
2 of them, Mighty Long Way featuring Keith Wonderboy Johnson. And then we have another one called I'm Blessed, featuring my friend Earl Jones Jr.
Yes, sir.
And it's a good record, man. And the whole CD will be out in July. It's going to bless you. I promise you. It'll bless you. Man,
this is good.
That's quiet.
So
what time is your services? What time is your services? Online services.
My online services at 11 a.m. You can catch us online on Facebook Live at New Grace Tabernacle at 11 a.m. And then on Tuesday nights, our Bible study is at 8 p.m. Same page, New Grace Tabernacle. We have an awesome virtual online Bible study. And we have praise and worship. My wife does our praise and worship. She's an awesome artist.
Bless you, Lady Wright.
Janitha Wright.
Yes,
her CDs are also available. You just look up Janitha Wright. She's a wonderful artist and a wonderful prayer warrior. And she holds me up in ministry. So that's where you can find us. Everything is online. And we're going to embrace this online ministry. You're going to feel the presence of God through the phone.
Come on. No, last thing, Antoine, before you want to say something, I forgot. What you do, y'all do a wedding, a marriage thing. Please let them know. Listen, for y'all who are going through or need help with your marriage, wonderful. I've sat in and heard a couple is, great information to know. It's going to help you.
Yes. Me and my wife, we're going on 20 years being married. This September will be 20 years.
Congrats, bro. Wow.
Matter of fact, we've been married. I've known Quennel longer than I know my wife.
Oh my God.
But
incredible.
We've been married for 20 years, and we have a show, podcast, or what you would call it, called Wedded Wednesdays. That's produced by Gaskin Production, which is headed by my son Rocky. We have 3 kids. I have a 23-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And Wedded Wednesdays, we just talk about the real things of marriage. A lot of people think marriage is always peachy green. Let me tell you the truth. marriage ain't always peaches and cream. Sometimes you have some disputes, but there's a way to get through that. You know, and me and my wife, we've experienced just about anything you can experience in a marriage. So tune into Wedded Wednesdays when you can. That's on Instagram as well and Facebook. Wedded Wednesdays.
Wow, I love it. Wow, incredible, incredible. Y'all got to do it, y'all. It's gonna bless you. It's gonna bless your life. And Antoine, man, I want to say something after you say.
Yeah. So singles are out now. Album comes out July. Wedded Wednesdays are on the church page.
The Wedded Wednesdays on the page by itself.
Okay. Did you give us that page?
Yeah, at Wedded Wednesdays.
Okay, at Wedded Wednesdays. Okay, I think that's about it.
Okay. So one more thing I want to say, and this is closing for real, but I think that this will bless somebody as well. Pastor, if you can share with us one of the greatest lessons that Dad passed along to you.
One of the greatest lessons that Dad passed along to me. It deals with your character. Nothing is nothing more valuable to you than a good name. So my father always said, your character has to go before you. When people say your name, they don't want to have to say your name and connect a whole bunch of negative stuff to it. So keep your character intact, because your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men, but your character keeps you in the room.
Come on.
So my father always told me, make sure your character is intact. Keep your name clean.
Wow. Wow. And I can say you've done that, bro. I know you've done that. Man, we're so honored, man, today to have you with us, bro. It's been a tremendous blessing, the things that you have shared today, man. It was so insightful, full of knowledge and wisdom. And I know that people have been blessed, and I pray that they share this and people go support your ministry, hear you preach. What a wonderful preacher you are, and check out your music, composition, arrangements, your writing. I just thank God for you, man, and I'm glad that the Lord has just continued to, man, have His way in our life and keep us, you know, man, we 20-something years strong, bro, and I believe that there's some people that you meet and it's just going to be for a moment. There's some people you meet and it's just for a short period of time. But there'll be very, very few that God would allow you to have in your life for a lifetime. You're one of those people, bro, for a lifetime, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Q. I love you, man.
Love you too, brother. Yep, no doubt about it, man. Thank you, bro.